Once upon a time, there was a man who wanted to make videos about how to read the Bible. The charge against the defendant is that the introductions to said videos are needlessly frivolous. I look forward to hearing back from you soon. Yours faithfully, Luke Markham. Genre is really important to how we think about writing, isn't it? You instinctively knew to treat those first 3 sentences differently because you'd picked up the clues that they are meant to be understood in different ways. The genre tool is simply paying attention to what kind of writing the bit of the Bible that you're reading is supposed to be. We're used to doing this all the time with music, aren't we? And we do it too with television or film.
That's why there's no more. And here, in its native environment. Oh, back of the net.
And we know that the rules and the way that we're to understand these things will change with genre. It'd be crazy to read Humpty Dumpty as if it's supposed to be a lesson on the inefficacy of using horses as medical practitioners. The Bible is no different. Genre matters. So what genres are there? Well, there are 2 really broad categories that are going to make the biggest difference. On the one hand, you've got stuff that really happened, like history, and on the other hand, stuff that didn't really happen, like poetry or imagery. We know that when we read poetry, you aren't supposed to look at every detail as if it's literal, like wondering, oh, how uncomfortable must the woman be in Song of Songs with her neck made out of shields? It's just an image to enjoy and to feel. Similarly, with history, we shouldn't make it so unreal that it's only a metaphor or only a lesson for my life, like wondering what the Goliaths I might face on Tuesday would be. Obviously, there are times when history will have real symbolic meaning too, and times when poetry is commenting on the real stuff that actually underlies it. But we shouldn't confuse our categories too much. We should let the author use them in the way that he's wanted. And so if it's a poem, don't take it too literally. If it's history, remember that these things really did happen. There's some other big categories, most of which you'd be really familiar with. In fact, you'd notice them because they're pretty obvious just the first time you crack open a book. The epistles are letters. In fact, that's what epistle means. There are histories in the Old Testament, which are the story of what happened to God's people. There's narrative in the New Testament too, the Gospels, the accounts of Jesus' life. And there's things like apocalyptic literature, which is all visions and dreams. And there's wisdom, which is different genres combined, stuff like the Psalms, which are poems, and then the Proverbs, which are a collection of wise sayings. Those are the broad categories, and they're each treated slightly differently. But even within those broad categories, there can be quite a range. Take prophecy, for example. A prophecy is all God speaking through the prophet to his people. And yet you could get a prophecy like Habakkuk, which is kind of a conversation between God and his prophet. And then a prophecy like Jonah, which is Jonah writing down his experience actually of being a really terrible prophet. Both of them God speaking to his people, but in quite different ways. Of course, even within a book, an author might use different genres. So when Paul's writing his letter, that's what most of the book's going to be. And then sometimes he's going to quote a song or a saying or a bit of the Old Testament. You might have to think differently about exactly how that quote's being used. And so it's just worth being aware of the different nuances and how different authors are going to use genre. But keeping these broad ideas of different types of writing we understand in different ways will keep us from getting ourselves in a muddle. So how should we use the genre tool then? Well, you can't use any of the tools completely independently, except perhaps the author's purpose tool, the king of all tools. If you missed that video, I think you can click up here and you should be able to catch up with it. No, most of the tools should be used in combination with one another. They're all about getting us to think really hard about the bit of the Bible that we're reading. The genre tool is no different to them. What the genre tool is going to be really good for is not necessarily unlocking the heart of any particular passage, but rather it'll keep us from making big mistakes, like for example reading a poem as if it's literal. The genre tool, I guess if you like, on the roller coaster of hearing God speak, it'll keep the cart firmly planted to the track. The genre tool keeps us going off the rails and making big mistakes when we read the Bible. That was the genre tool. I'm looking forward to next week when we dive in again to our Bible reading toolbox.